Good evening, good evening. Welcome to Now Chat Show. If it's your first time to the platform, welcome, 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 and Happy New Year. This is our first live episode of 2021. Now, first and foremost, I just want to just check how is everyone doing? Let's see who we've got in the building, who's joined us. I can see there's a couple of you watching currently via YouTube. Thank you so much for um, coming over here to Now Chat Show. You could be anywhere else, but you're here with us, and I'm sure you are here because you want to learn more about Cervical Cancer Awareness Week. What is Cervical Cancer Awareness Week? Now, this entire week from the 18th until the 24th is dedicated to give people more information in regards to what is cancer, cervical cancer, and how you can prevent it, what steps and procedures you need to do to ensure that you're doing the right thing, and just to hear about various different people as well who've also survived from cervical cancer. So thank you for joining. Now, guys, our doctor should be with us very shortly, but I do have my co-host who's with me, and she's going to be sharing her story as well in regards to cervical cancer. But before I get started, let me just give you a little snippet in regards to cervical cancer awareness. Now, if this is your first time, welcome on board, because I can see some more of you actually joined the show. And secondly, if you are watching the live after the live, you watch after the show is actually gone live, welcome again. And please, guys, ensure that you do subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I don't even know why you haven't done so, because it doesn't even cost you a penny. All you've got to ensure is that you have a Gmail account. You click on the notification bell, so every time we go live, we post any content, you will be the first person to receive it. Right, so I'm going to go straight in. So, did you guys know that 2 women lose their life due to cervical cancer every day? Did you hear me, guys? Every day. At least 9 women are diagnosed with cervical cancer every day, and 75% of cervical cancer can be prevented by having cervical screening. So when I say cervical screening, I mean basically having a smear test, having a regular update check with your gynecologist, going to the GP, making sure that you get your smear test to prevent yourself from getting cervical cancer. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in our special guest, who is Dr. Eskander. He's a consultant gynecologist who has gained a reputation as one of the pre-eminent gynecologists working in London. He's one of the first doctors to provide, I'm going to make an attempt to pronounce this, so guys don't laugh at me if I get it all wrong, yeah? Colposcopy service and laser treatment. He was one of the first doctors to do this. So basically, that is like where they check to see whether or not you've got cancer, etc. But I'm not going to go into it because I don't even want to try and go like I'm a gynecologist, because I really am not. So let's bring in our guests.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Nice to join you.
Hello. Good evening. Good evening. How are you, sir? How are you doing?
I'm very well. I'm very well. Thank you.
Good. So if you can just, I've given a quick snippet of who you are. So if you can just let our viewers, because we do have people watching us, and we're also going to be having people watching the live after the show. So if you can just give us a bit of insight of who you are and how did you get into your profession?
So I am a senior consultant gynecologist at the moment in private practice. So I retired from the NHS perhaps about 20 years ago in 1999.
Right.
And I used to be, I was trained at the Royal Free, and then I worked a little bit at King's College for about 3.5 years. And then I went overseas, and then I came back and I did some work in the NHS, and then I decided I want to dedicate my time to private practice. And so I'm now really just full-time consultant in private practice in central London.
Right. Okay. And so how, I mean, what made you want to go down this path in terms of, because obviously being a doctor, you can go in any different areas. You can go into general, you can deal with like babies, etc. But why
Correct. Correct.
gynecologists specifically?
Most of us, actually, most obstetrician gynecologists are attracted to the profession because of obstetrics, because of babies initially.
Hmm.
But as the nights grinds on and you wake up a lot during the night and you have sleepless nights with babies, and as you approach the age of 50, most obstetricians change into gynecology and look after women and leave the babies to the young boys. So
Right.
I was mainly interested in delivering baby. It was such a happy event the first time I did it, and I was so satisfied. And I remember it 3 a.m. in the morning back home in Egypt, and I said, that's what I want to do. And then I obviously dedicated myself to women because I grew up with women. I have three sisters. I have midwives. I have nurses. So, and I felt sorry. I'm compassionate about relieving the journeys of a woman agony. I must admit, women really go through a lot from the beginning,
Definitely.
from period pains to menstrual pains to labor pains to premenstrual tension and all that. So in fact, I was just interested to help women, and I still do until today.
That's amazing. So, can you just give us a bit more information in regards to, because obviously this is Cervical Cancer Awareness Week, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's from today. Well, started yesterday actually till the 24th. So, can you give us a bit more insight in terms of what is cervical cancer?
Okay. So cervical cancer is really changes in the cells in the neck of the womb. Now, the neck of the womb is right on the top of the vagina. So if you can imagine, the neck of the womb is being touched regularly by trauma during intercourse or friction, but also it's in a hostile environment where there are bacteria, viruses, and obviously acidity of the vagina. So the neck of the womb goes under continuous changes all the time. When one is young, and the younger you are, and the younger you are sexually active, the neck of the womb is really vulnerable to infection and changes. So it can easily be attacked, and it can become infected with either viruses or bacteria. Now, bacteria causes the infection, as we know, it's just a discharge, vaginal discharge. Sexually transmitted infections are fairly common. Again, chlamydia and gonorrhea at a younger age. But really, the one which concerns us most for cervical cancer is the virus called human papilloma virus.
It's called
It's
who? Say that again.
human
Hmm.
papilloma virus, HPV. So if you talk
HPV. Right, that's
HPV,
HPV. Okay.
so HPV is just so common that if you were to test a young population in London under the age of 25, 60 to 70% of young people will have infection with the HPV. And
Right.
HPV is transient. It will change. It will go. Our body immunity is great. One has to remember something about viruses. They're not like bacteria.
Hmm.
Viruses live within our DNA, inside the cells. So they camouflage. They mingle with our DNA, and the immune system pass by. They just wouldn't notice them. Just unlike bacteria. So in fact, they are difficult to get rid of immediately. But with time, 90% of people within 1 year will get rid of the virus. So that's fortunate. So
Hmm.
most people really will not have any problem with the virus. Now, a small number where the virus lingers on and immunity cannot get rid of it, being close to our DNA, it induces changes. And then our DNA multiplies rather in an orderly manner, it becomes disorderly. Disorderly multiplication of DNA, of our DNA, is simply cancer. And it's
Right.
pre-cancer as long as it's within the cells. Unfortunately, that takes years. It doesn't happen overnight. So if we can catch it while it's within the cell and it has not broken the basement of the cell, then it's still not cancer, it's pre-cancer. And that where is the role of cervical smear. Cervical smear is able now, number one, to test for the HPV virus.
Mhm.
So we have a test really which can tell us whether people are infected or not. And if they're infected, we can then test the cells in the same sample to see if there are DNA changes, pre-cancer changes, which can range
Right.
from mild to severe. And as I said, we have time to treat it because once we kill it off, these cells, that's it. It's just the end of the story. 90,
So it
92%.
won't come back. So it won't return again.
A small number will. A small number, it all depends on the persistence of the HPV. But 90 to 95% will not have recurrence after treatment.
Right.
And the
Okay.
treatment, and it's all very simple, really, because you are talking about a sample taken from the cervix, from the neck of the womb. At the moment, it's by the doctors and the nurses. But I can imagine within a year, people may be able to get the sample posted to them at the comfort of their home, and all what they do is just put a swab inside the vagina and send it off to the NHS. It's coming very soon because we now test for the virus. And then
Right.
if the virus is positive, then they come back for a sample. But if it's negative, that actually excludes cancer to a great degree.
Right.
So
Okay.
I hope
So
that explains it all.
yeah, it does explain it. But what I want to also ask you is this. So, you know, like you said, that how eventually you would be able to get the kit and it would be sent to you at home. But how would, because, you know, obviously when you're going to, like, say, to your practice or going to the hospital and you're having to get the apparatus put in to be able to, you know, expand so you can actually do the swab, etc. How would one feel comfortable in doing that themselves?
Well, at the moment, it's not rolled out yet. This is coming, I
Right.
think, in the next year or two. So at the moment, you have to go to the clinic to have it done. But really, it will be simple. It's already been tried. It's already been piloted outside this country, and it
Okay.
works. It works. It's just a simple cotton swab,
Yeah.
which
To
we
me,
invest
yeah.
it as far as it goes and roll it around and just put it in a small bottle and send it off.
It's a bit like when you're doing the actual corona test, you know, like for the COVID-19, you put in the swab
Yeah,
up
yeah,
your nose
yeah,
and you're
yeah,
turning it.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
more or less similar to that. What?
Similar to that.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring on my um, co-host Janelle Rayburn, and she's going to share her story, and then we're going to further the conversation there.
Okay,
All
fire
right.
away.
All righty.
Good evening, guys.
Hey
Hello.
Jay.
Hi.
Hi, nice to see you,
Hey.
Jeanette.
Yes, you too. You too. Okay, my story. Well, basically, because I've had a near miss, I would call it, with cervical cancer, I identify with everything that you've said, Dr. Eskander. And obviously, I did my own research and found out lots of information and lots of kind of facts about it. So I fully, kind of know what you're talking about. But my experience is this: at the age of 22, one day I had a severe itch down there, and you think of all sorts of things. And I thought, is it thrush? Is it this? Is it that? And just a caveat, actually, at the time, I didn't have a sexual partner at the time. I was already sexually active by the age of 22, but I didn't have a sexual partner at the time. And so, as you do, as you should do as a woman, take a mirror and have a look. And so I took a mirror and I had a look. And what I found was a lesion or a slightly raised area, probably about, I would say, almost the size of a penny, that was really severely itchy, and was slightly grey as well in colour. Just slightly raised, slightly grey, and I didn't know what it was. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? So I booked myself into a gum clinic and I went along. you know, just to get checked out, even though, as I said, I didn't have a sexual partner at the time. I thought the best thing to do is just go and get checked out. And when I went to the clinic, the nurse had a look, and she said, "Oh, I'm just going to call the doctor." And I said, "Okay." And I said, is everything okay? She said, "Yeah, it's fine." And she called the doctor in, and the doctor had a look, and the doctor said, "Oh, we're going to have to send you to the hospital to get a sample of this little patch." And just to be clear, the patch was on my vulva, so just beside the entrance to my vagina. And so they said, "Yeah, we'll send you to the hospital." So immediately I was a bit concerned by that. They did really, you know, allay my fears and say, "It's nothing to worry about. We'll test it. We'll see what's going on, and then we'll take it from there." So I had an appointment booked pretty quickly after that, and I went to the hospital. And what they actually did was they lasered that bit of that site, if you like, that lesion. They actually lasered that bit away, a piece of that, to test it and carry out a biopsy. Now, of course, I'm 22, I'm young, I don't know, I'm still kind of trying to figure out what's going on. And the gynecologist at the time, she was great, God rest her soul. It was a lady called Betty Mansell. I don't know if you've heard of her in the industry, Dr Eskander, but there is now, she's passed away unfortunately, but there's now a ward at the Whittington Hospital that treated me that's named after her. And she was great. And so this sample was tested. It came back as VIN3, which you will know what that is, vulval, and I don't know what the I, intraplas something, and the N, stage 3.
Yeah. Intraepithelial neoplasm, yes?
Neoplasma, that's it, stage 3. And what she said to me was that we're going to have a look on your cervix because this indicates that there might be something going on with your cervix. So I said, okay. And I was booked in for a colposcopy investigation. So colposcopy, which I believe is something that you were involved in pioneering, is when a camera is inserted into the vagina, it's magnified, and it takes a magnified look at your at your cervix. So I had that done, and she had a look, and she said, "Okay, I see some stuff there. We're going to have to take a sample from your cervix and have a look and get that tested." So I had what was called a punch biopsy done. Sounds quite brutal. Actually, I'm not going to even lie. It was quite traumatic at the time. It's a metal apparatus that clamps down and literally chops off a piece of the end of your cervix.
Yes, we give spray local anesthetics nowadays.
I didn't have
You didn't have no anesthetic.
No,
they literally punch you and just nip.
Yeah,
it's a snip. It's a snip.
It's a snip. But what I was told at the time is the medical the general medical consensus is that there's very little feeling on the cervix, and therefore that's, you know, it's okay to do that. Having said that, I'll come to that a bit later. But having said that, I have since been told by another gynecologist that I was under for other reasons that actually Afro-Caribbean women tend to have more sensitive cervix than other populations. I don't know whether you can attest to that, Dr. Eskander, or not.
Not
okay. So it was uncomfortable, to say the least. And that sample was sent away, and it came back as CIN3. So cervical intro, whatever the word is, stage 3. So this was all a lot of information to take in.
Oh, so unlucky.
Yeah, as a 22-year-old. And basically what she explained to me when I went to sit down with her for my results was that I had pre-cancer, the last stage before it turns into cancer, so precancerous cells. Now, of course, that was so much for me to take in, so much for me to absorb. And actually, at the time, I was having, even though you're supposed to have a smear every 3 years, I was actually having yearly smears just because I was that health conscious, and I went to my GP. And so I'd had a smear probably a year before that, and it came back clear. Now, she said to me, like you explained, Dr. Eskander, she said to me that cervical cancer is a slow growth cancer. And so those changes happen over time. It's not a quick thing. It happens over time. So my question to her at the time was, but I've been having smears more regularly than is recommended. The last one came back clear. So why didn't it pick this up? And she said, basically, the NHS smear regime at the time, we're going back more than 20 years. So the NHS smear regime at the time had a high false negative rate. I think it was about 40% false negative rate. And she was really happy that I had taken the steps from this itchy lesion that I'd found to get it checked out and to get further investigations done. And she explained to me at the time that she had seen a lot of young women who had progressed to cancer that had these lesions all over their vulva, and they hadn't done anything about it, and it had progressed to cancer. So she really commended me on the fact that I took the steps to get this checked out. And of course, you know, I'm absolutely kind of fearful and in panic and thinking, what the hell is going on? And she, you know, she was really good. She said to me, don't worry, we can treat it. And as long as we treat it and get rid of all of the cells and keep an eye on you and a watch on you, you should be okay. What she also said to me is, had I not come to her, probably within about 10 years, I would have been fully in the throes of cancer and likely would have lost my life, to be honest. So that was a real shock to me. And I just give thanks that, you know, I took the steps that I needed to get checked out. And so the treatment that I had was a laser cone biopsy. And literally, and I'll pass it over to you to explain from, you know, the medical technical term what that is. But what happened was a laser, the end of my cervix was lasered off with all of the precancerous cells. And that actually removed all of the cells that you mentioned so that it didn't progress to cancer, number one, and it didn't spread anywhere else, number two. So I had that done, and then I was under colposcopy. So I didn't go back to having normal smears after that. I was actually under colposcopy for the next 10 years or more of my life. So I think initially I went back for the first 2 years, every 6 months. And then after that, it was yearly. And I was only actually recently discharged from that clinic, probably within the last five years or so, discharged back to having regular smears. Every single colposcopy investigation I had after that was clear. And then obviously I was discharged out of kind of specific gynecological care back to my surgery. And I'm pleased to say that the last smear test that I've had, a regular smear, came back and everything was fine. But I think what was really quite traumatic for me was, one, that I was young, two, that I had had smears and they came back normal, and three, if I hadn't been sensible and responsible and just thought, oh, it's just, yeah, it's probably nothing, and hadn't gone and got it checked out, things could have been a lot different now, and I may not even have been here to tell my story, really. So I guess what I took away from that is how important it is to get checked out, but also how important it is to know yourself intimately down there. It's my body, it's our bodies. We need to know exactly what's going on down there. And you'd be surprised at the number of women who don't know what their vagina looks like.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
The starting point really is actually getting to grips with your own body, knowing what it looks like, knowing what's normal, and then anything that's abnormal, getting that checked out. So as I say, I'm pleased to say I'm abnormal cell-free. I have been for the last 20 years plus, and I pray that continues. Just as a side note to my story, my grandmother on my mum's side died from cervical cancer probably about 20 years ago. And an aunt of mine, and my grandmother was 68 when she passed, relatively young. And an aunt of mine on my dad's side passed away from cervical cancer, and she was about 26. Wow. What I have been told is that it's not necessarily genetic. So not the same way as breast cancer, you're genetically inclined. I don't know if the medical view on that has changed over the years. As I say, I'm going back 20 years plus. But I think the important message is just to let women know that this is not a joke. It can be resolved. And I guess just like prostate cancer, if you get it early, and other types of cancers, colon cancer, but you really need to take responsibility and take good care of your health and know your body, and not be afraid or embarrassed to, one, know your body intimately, but two, to go and talk about anything that's abnormal.
Yes, I think this is just an amazing story, and I think, Janelle, where are you now? Have you got children?
No.
So you're healthy enough, and you have your cervix, your uterus, should you decide to have children.
Yeah.
Now the most important thing I really want you to understand, it is so rare to have vulval cancer and cervical cancer in a young person at the age of 22.
Wow.
So rare. You are the second person maybe I have heard of. So it's not common. But the fantastic thing is that you, despite that, you paid attention to an abnormal lump. And I must admit, not many people will think it's anywhere near cancer. And it wasn't. The VIN3 is really still precancerous. It's intraepithelial. It's inside the cells.
Mhm.
But obviously, you have tendency to have aggressive cancer, either because you had an aggressive HPV, and there are 16 and 18 for the cervix, and also some for the vulva or aggressive, or you have low immunity. And we don't understand, but it's not common for people to have that severe degree of precancer before 25.
Wow.
And so we used to do smears under 25. So the advice as I grew up, when I started colposcopy and all that at the Royal Free, is that we do smears as soon as you become sexually active. Presumably it was related to sexual activity, which we now learn is because of HPV virus. And we did from 16, from 18 we did that, and we did it every 2 to 3 years. But as a result, we've seen changes in the cells from the age of 18 onwards, which prompted us to do a colposcopy. And when we found changes more than mild, we even treated them. And treatment, as you said, you just take a piece of the cervix. So resulting in a shorter cervix. And later we realized there were complications with preterm labors and miscarriages.
Yes. Yeah.
Then a clever guy recently, 5 years ago, he said, yes, there is a lot of HPV and a lot of changes in the cells, but the majority of them will disappear. We don't need to know about them because we worry people too much. We do a lot of colposcopy, we got a lot of services, and what? For very rare people who will develop cancer like you, that is the trade-off, unfortunately. For not common. For you, it was obviously worth it. But then again, if there are people who are at high risk, lots of sexually transmitted diseases, perhaps sex at a younger age, perhaps multiple sexual partners over the years, yes, we will do a smear test.
Mm-hmm.
But we have lowered the threshold for treatment of precancerous cells of the cervix under the age of 25 because of the complications.
That's sorry to cut you, but that is so good to hear, because again, you said I'm very rare, so I'll take that as I'm special. Thank you very much. But at the time, so I became sexually active just before the age of 18, so it wasn't considered extremely young. Maybe about a month before I turned 18. And I had one sexual partner. I had a boyfriend at the time, and he was the only person that I was with. I can't remember at the time whether they tested for HPV or not. Maybe they did. I really can't remember. But I have been tested for HPV since, and I'm clear. Now, that goes back to your point about saying that, it's a virus, and if your immune system is good enough, then it will fight that virus. So I think maybe there was a combination of things going on at the time. I was probably stressed, through certain experiences that I've been through in my teens and my childhood and growing up. And potentially my immune system was suppressed. I had moved countries at the time. I was studying abroad, so I spent a year studying in Paris, and that's actually where I discovered this itchy lesion on my vulva. So maybe that had something to do with it as well. And I think it's also important just to say the HPV virus is, there are many strains, as you've pointed out, and there are particular strains that relate to, can lead to cervical cancer. But just for the layman out there, this is the way it was explained to me. The HPV virus is the virus that causes genital warts, one particular strain. The strains that can potentially lead to cervical cancer are more often than not symptomless, so you would never know that you have it.
Correct.
And so, you know, whether I had it or not, I don't know. I think probably
Only way is
yeah.
So the only way is a sample, and it's a smear test or a sample.
Yeah. I think I remember that I didn't have it actually. So it's probably even rarer that I didn't have it. And then obviously back to your point about taking the cell, so actually removing the end of my cervix. You're right. I was always told that if I were to conceive, I would maybe need a stitch in my cervix to prevent literally the fetus falling out, because you know it compromises the strength and the integrity of the cervix.
Yes, I mean the cervix is really between 3 to 4 centimeters long. So, you know, and we aim to remove about 8 centimeters. So the majority of people nowadays don't have problems. And I in my clinic I measure the cervix by ultrasound beforehand, and I measure it afterhand. So I try to minimize and control it. But sometimes you just have to remove if there is an abnormal cell which extends into the cervix. But I want to say that you were very unfortunate, but at the same time, so fortunate to have it treated and eliminated completely. These are nasty disease at that age. And not only that, you still have your cervix and your uterus. So it's fantastic. It's well done, yes.
Can I just ask a question? Janelle, so you know, obviously when you discovered and you queried in regards to, did you actually speak to any of your friends at the time with your concerns? Or did you just went to the doctor?
About when I found
when you discovered it? Yeah. Did you share it with any of your
I did. So I was living with a friend of mine in Paris at the time, and we're about the same age. Am I cutting out?
Yeah, you just frozen, but we can actually
hear me.
Yeah, that's fine. You're back here with us. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was living with a friend at the time in Paris, and we were about the same age. And I told her, and she just said, you know, just get yourself checked out. So I was back and forth between Paris and London quite regularly, and I booked into a gum clinic, and that's how the investigations started, really. So I'm glad that A, that I had somebody to talk to about it, but B, that I'm just the kind of person that is very conscious about my health and took action, you know, because as I say, if I hadn't, things could have been very different. I mean, you know, the case of Jade Goody is a well-known case, and she lost her life to cervical cancer at, I believe, you know, before she was 30. She was in her 20s. She was in her
20s, that's right. Even 2 young boys at the time.
For a smear, but didn't go for her follow-up. You know, so, and any females, especially younger than me, that I speak to, you know, whether it be family, friends, or whatever, my advice to them is do not ignore your smear test. Make sure you book in for your smear test, because it's, you know, it's just something that is a few moments out of the day that could save your life, literally.
Can I come in, Lilian, and just really try to advise the people who are listening to us now? Really,
please do.
So really, we agreed the age of 25 is the age, unless you feel that you've had earlier sex, unless you had several episodes of STDs, or you've had more than one sexual partner for any circumstances. Otherwise, really, 25 is fine, when you will be invited automatically by the NHS. And if you're not invited, ring your GP and ask him, you know, that I want to book in for a smear test. Now, most people are worried that they're going to be examined internally. Now, what you have to understand is that the vagina is a tight tube, but it's wrinkled, and it does stretch to the size of a baby's head. And the speculum we put in during the examination is nowhere near that. Providing it's open slowly, ask the nurse to open it just slowly, look for the cervix before you open it completely, and try to follow the cervix. It shouldn't be painful. There is pressure on the bladder, there is pressure on the back passage, and that's about it. Taking the sample from the cervix is a gentle brush, which is like brushing your skin. It's only the speculum. I'm afraid women have to get used to have a speculum because that's the only way we can see the vagina and the cervix, and it's going to happen a lot. So relax, breathe in and out, and just let the nurse do it, and you will learn.
Yeah. I've had so many speculums inserted that I know which speculum to use because I'm actually, again, a bit of a unique case in that my cervix is quite deep and it's tilted backwards, and so it's very hard to locate, and it has been very, I don't want to scare anybody, but for myself in particular, but for those who are less experienced, i.e. healthcare professionals who are less experienced, it has been painful and has caused me some discomfort in the past. So whenever I go now, I know to ask for a long speculum. It's called a Winchester speculum for anyone who wants to know out there. And I also have to have my bottom elevated,
Right.
almost above my head. And when I go in, some healthcare professionals are okay with me telling that, some aren't. And if they think they know how to do it, and then we don't get there, we end up having to go my way because I've been for 20 years.
I'll try that with some of my women, the one I see at the clinic.
Yeah. So
And then,
really, I have to elevate, and then it's much and kind of bear down into that, even cough into that, so they can see that get to the cervix.
the thing is to find the cervix. The cervix sometimes is toward the back, the middle, or to the front. If it's in the middle, it's easy. If it's to the front, it's very difficult. And we just have difficulty to find it. But to be honest, I think in time, most people are going to have just a simple cotton swab inserted in the vagina, done at home. That will change everything. I think people will become. But
You know what? So, sorry, doctor. When my last smear test, that's what I actually did my own swab in the surgery.
here we are.
You did it. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a question. Sorry. So Coach Carla asks, Doctor, in relation to Janelle getting a false negative in the first instance, how sophisticated and reliable are today's tests?
I have never seen. Yeah, I've never heard of a 40% false. Did you say false negative 40%?
40% was what I was advised at the time. We're going back, like this is 2000. This is 2000.
So remember, so you have a brush, you have to twist it 360 degrees to pick up cells. Well, if there is a small lesion, it just may not pick up these cells. Hence, we have given away from examining the cells and we replaced it by the HPV. Now, HPV test is much more sensitive, over 90%, and we don't look at the cells unless the HPV is positive. So
but how common is it for somebody not to have HPV but to develop abnormal and potentially precancerous cells?
Oh, it's something in the region of 4 to 6% only. So you're likely to miss less now. So the HPV test is 94, 95% more sensitive than examining the cells.
Right. Okay.
So that changed everything now, because now we have a more sensitive test. So it's normal. So and we said we repeat it every 3 years. Now, if the test comes back positive, and the changes in the cells that we examined after that, is only mild, don't worry. You just have HPV infection living inside the cells. And as I said, 90% of people will get rid of it within a year. So all what you need is repeat the HPV test within 6 months or a year. I think the NHS offers a year now, in order to give time for the HPV to disappear. And since it's a slow progressing disease, you don't need to worry. Okay, so we can just wait a year. Now, if it does persist after a year, or if it does progress, into more abnormal cells, well, we'll do a colposcopy. And the colposcopy, as you said, just with a
But that's
microscope.
only after a year, though, that you would do that.
Yes, because
Right.
if you do a lot of colposcopy in the beginning, you'll end up maybe over treating people. And since already studies showed that when you have a mild problem with HPV, the chance of it moving to cancer straight away is rare. It just doesn't happen often. So it's worth waiting because the majority will disappear. So no colposcopy, no overtreatment. And the ones who persist, we will see. We're still among the ones we see. It's not a big number that we see abnormal cells. So most of them will be discharged, and we'll pick up the small number whose the lesion progressed into more severe disease where the DNA has been so much disturbed. And all what we need is to destroy it one way or another. So I started using laser back in 78, but we no longer have to use laser. We just use heat. And in this country, we remove a cone. We remove it with a hot wire loop because we prefer to examine the cone. But all over the world, they use freezing. In the States, they use heat only, just burn it off. As long as you burn it one way or another with least destructive method to the cervix. It's a simple procedure. Most of the time, it's done without anesthetics. We just give local anesthetics. It takes 5 minutes to do it, and then you just seal off the blood vessels of sex for about maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and then cervix really grows and back to normal, more or less, albeit a little bit shorter. And 95% of people are cured, and that's it. You have a follow-up. Now we don't follow up even for 10 years because if the HPV disappears, we just don't need to follow up anymore.
Right.
So you get a shorter follow up now.
Right. So it sounds like there's been lots of advances, which is great. I mean, I was put under general anaesthetic to have a laser cone biopsy. That was just obviously the consultant gynecologist at the time. That was her preference.
And still some
I think I was probably glad for that, if I'm honest.
sure. You have the
And
choice.
yeah, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the other thing that I discovered is that viruses like HPV and the herpes virus can be transmitted even using a condom. Am I right in saying that because of viral shedding?
Well, the condom covers only the penis. So the rest of the pubic area, which is not covered, you can obviously transmit the virus to the pubic area, but then we're talking about vulvar problems. I don't feel an intact condom should be able to transmit the virus. I can't see how. I never heard of it, actually. I can't see. There must have been a leakage. But I think condom will protect you to a great degree, and I strongly recommend it. And just before I forget, really, I want to say something so important, because the practice of sex has changed over the years since I was very young. And there are now people who practice oral sex and anal sex. And you have to remember, herpes, HPV, chlamydia, if they are there, they will be transmitted to oral sex, and they will be transmitted to anal sex. Much, much more difficult to treat than cervical cancer. They're not accessible. I mean, herpes simplex can actually suffocate you if you have herpes in the throat. HPV, so difficult, the cancer of the throat. Anal sex and HPV, it's so difficult to treat the anus. You're talking about a colon, which is not really, it's very thin wall. The cervix is a chunk of hard tissue, not easy to penetrate with cancer. But the colon, the throat, the tongue, the mouth. So before you practice other than normal sex, think. because HPV is there, chlamydia is there, herpes is there, genital herpes is there as well. Sorry.
No, there's no need to, but we need to talk about these things because at the end of the day, this is what it's all about. It's about awareness, and it is for us to all be mindful because, you know, obviously you have various different religions, etc., and, you know, girls or guys, they won't have sex, but obviously they're still practicing oral sex, where obviously they're still, you know, inclined to catch any form of like sexually transmitted disease, HPV, etc. So yes, we definitely do need to have this conversation. And even for the viewers who are also watching, these are definitely conversations that you do need to be having with your young teenagers as well, because obviously, like in Janelle's case, she was 22, do you know what I mean? And obviously we talk about Jay Goodin, you know, so these are things that we definitely do need to discuss. It's not something that we just wipe underneath the carpet and do not talk about it. We rather talk about it now rather than it being too late.
And don't be embarrassed. When you have a new relationship, ask your partner, have you got any sexual diseases? Have it tested? It's fine. Both of you tested. And to be honest, unfortunately, males we do not have a test for male partners to see if they have HPV infection or not. And you know, sometimes I just do a semen sample, but it's not approved. It's not enough. But ask about chlamydia. When was the last chlamydia? Genital herpes. If they had genital herpes, just be aware of it. You know, it doesn't kill, but certainly for oral sex and anal sex, it's a different problem.
Coach Carla also says, because she works within a college, she says, "Doctor, you need to come to my college to speak to my students about this."
Very important. Well, I think it's enough they look at this chat, but do get in touch with me, no problem.
Yeah, so Coach Carla, if you do wish to get in contact with Dr. Eskander, please do follow the information that is being provided. I can share that information once again with you all.
Eskander is a fashion designer, which I like her clothes. She passed away, but it's Eskander, it's Eskander, but it's fine. It's
Eskander, fine. Okay, apologies.
Many names, it's fine. Eskander is easy. Like it's after.
We're naming you brand. Well, you are a brand, aren't you? You are a brand by yourself, so you know you've got a great reputation. So there we go.
So I do have a question actually before you go. I mean, it's not a choice that I don't have children, and I've never tried to conceive. It's just the way that life has worked out for me so far in terms of partners and you know where I am at in my life. I do still hope to be able to have a child. And so if I'm blessed with that, would I then have to consider maybe you know, reviewing the integrity of my cervix? Would I have to look into that through obstetrics, or are you saying that it's no longer the case and that the cervix could probably manage?
So I think that, you know, calculating from your history, you must be in the region of early 40s, although you don't look it.
Thank you, but yeah, I am.
Yeah, you don't look it. Very good. So number one, I think you have to find out whether you still have a good ovarian reserve. And to be honest, if you really want to consider having a child, even if you're not in a relationship now, maybe you want to consider freezing eggs because the ovaries are really on the way out. So you know you can do a fertility test now, ultrasound, to look at the number of eggs in the ovaries. You can do a hormone test called anti-Mullerian hormone, or AMH, and get some idea. But my guess is that if I was you, I would check if I have eggs and go and freeze them.
That's good advice. I've already had a fertility test a few years ago, maybe more than 5 years ago now.
But it does change. The ovaries change every year.
And that was on the NHS, and the results, if I'm honest, weren't great. But I had low. Is it the low? What are they called? What's it called? But what are the little things called?
Antral follicles.
Yeah, I had low follicle count for my age, but I still had some follicles. It was just a low follicle count. So
But it's not a problem nowadays. I mean, egg donation is widely available as well. You can have younger eggs, and you can have them implanted in your womb. You can carry the baby. But if you wanted really to know the state of the cervix, we can measure the cervix now by ultrasound even before you get pregnant. So a transvaginal scan with an empty bladder, we can tell us whether your cervix is shorter than 25 millimeters, where there is a risk 20 millimeter, more risks of miscarriage. And if it's higher than 25, I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay.
20 to 25, maybe you have to have it watched during pregnancy.
So the more important advice you've given me is about maybe looking into freezing eggs. Then.
Freezing eggs, and if not, as I said, consider egg donation if when the time comes with your partner's sperm.
Yeah.
But how easy is it to freeze your eggs under the NHS? Because I know, isn't there generally like a charge or something? How does it work?
They don't offer freezing on the NHS. It's
right, so it has to be private.
Yeah, I mean, it's a luxury treatment, really. When there are people waiting for babies already, they can't just offer young people to freeze. Yeah. So the general advice I give to people that if you're not in a position to have babies by 32, and have an ultrasound, check your ovarian reserve, and consider egg freezing. Egg freezing is simply an in vitro fertilization cycle, and so it's an IVF. So it will simply involve injections to make some eggs grow on the ovaries, and some hormonal changes. So about 5 visits to the fertility clinic, and then light sedation, take the eggs out, and then freeze them, and that's it. So you have some spare eggs in the bank in case circumstances didn't work out. Costs including IVF, including medications, including follow-up, you're looking at about 4,500. Most clinic in our clinic and most clinics.
Alternatively, there's the option of adopting, right?
Alternatively, adoption, of course.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, thank you both. This has been a very insightful chat, and guys who are watching currently now, if you do have any questions, any burning questions that you do need to ask, please do it now, because this is your last opportunity. But by all means, do stay connected with Dr. Alex as well. And you can also follow him on Instagram. All of the information is within the chat. And for those who are watching the live after the show is being live, all that information will be available to you. So please feel free to connect. So this is the last part of the show. Gosh, it's been very interesting. I'm thinking about myself now, because I remember for myself having to go and get my sweat test done. Oh gosh, can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. When I was having some issues with my cervical, my cervix as well, but nothing in comparison to Janelle. So Janelle, I want to say well done, and thank you so much for sharing. And I hope whoever's been watching, I hope that you've learned something from Janelle. And if you do actually see anything that is, I'm not too sure, please do go and get yourself checked out. Do not leave it to the last minute, because this is your life and you only get one chance at it. This is not a dress rehearsal. We're not coming back and starting all over again. It doesn't work that way. This is it. So please do take care of yourself. Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any final words that you would like to share, Doctor?
Final word really is that do not ignore your smear test reminder in spite of COVID. And remember, if the NHS is inundated, which quite honestly, I don't think they will be with the smear test. It's just a different route. Pay for it privately. It's a good investment, and it's only once every 3 years. So, it's there are plenty of providers who can provide you with a private smear test.
Thank you. And Janelle, do you have any final words?
No, I was going to ask the doctor if he had final words, and I think that's what I would echo, is that don't ignore your smear test. Is not just a formality. Like you said, Kaz, it's your life. It's not a dress rehearsal. So, for the older ladies out there, obviously make sure you get it done. But any advice you give to younger females, please, you know, young people have this sense of immortality, and that they're going to live forever and that they're untouchable. It's just the nature of being young. But actually, it's really encouraging young women to make sure that they take care of their health and their sexual health.
Yeah. So to protect yourself against HPV. But one more last word about young people. It doesn't only affect young people. Elder people who are not in a stable relationship, you know, they divorced, also meet a new man. HPV is there. They can develop cervical cancer at a later age, even at 50s and 60s.
Wow.
So if you are embarking on a new relationship, again, HPV, protect yourself, condoms, and then, you know, before you remove the condom, decide, you know, is he free of HPV? You know, has he been with anybody? You know, men can be, you know, young people have a lot of HPV, and if they've been with young people, they will infect you, and it's the same story: HPV, precancerous cells, and cancer.
Wow.
Okay.
Thank you so much. That is great information that you just provided there, because man, you're just making me start to think about myself. Anyway, I'm keeping it real. But anyway, we are going to now conclude. We've concluded everything. So the show is now finished. But guys, thank you so much for your time. And thank you for watching. And also, just to let you all know that we are doing the archive series, which is on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube. So basically what it is, it's previous episodes of shows that myself and Janelle have done in the past. And we're just basically just putting it right out there again, because it's such great, enriching content, and content that we can relate to today. So it just makes sense to revisit, because, you know, repetition is good for learning, right? So you can never listen to something more and more. And you know, when you listen to something once, you'd be amazed at what you thought you got the first time. You didn't get it, you get it the second time or the third time. Just saying. So do keep in the loop with us on that one. So until next time, everybody, bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much for putting all that together. Well done.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.